welcome back to Bridges Over History. I want to start this with a kind of introduction to, me personally. So I want to celebrate 50 subscribers, which I know might seem kind of crazy to a lot of people. And I want to celebrate us breaking 4,000 views, something I could never have imagined would happen. And there's just a lot going on with the channel right now that I never considered would ever be possible, right? When I created Bridges Over History, my original idea was I was creating a channel for, just me personally, just to document what my studies and, my own, academic work and stuff that I've completed and done. And just to give more of a, a portfolio so that, whenever I had a chance to interview with, say, a big name museum or something like that, because my end goal as a military historian is to work on video games and movies. That's my end goal. That's what I've always wanted to do. And it's my dream job, which I know may sound crazy, but I want to be a historical consultant. I want to be the guy that's there critiquing and changing and making sure that video games and movies follow the settings that they actually sit in. So this was kind of a portfolio for me. I didn't expect it to blow up overnight. And so I want to thank you, because it's all you guys. It's not me. I'm not promoting my channel. I'm not, putting ads out there. I'm not, really expressing it. I shared on Facebook with my family that I was making a YouTube channel and stuff like that. If they wanted to check it out, they could. But, my first few videos were on track for what I expected. They hit, 20 views, 30 views, and I was like, okay, cool. Some of my family turned in, maybe some of their family friends turned in, tuned into the channel. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I make one video about U.S. tanks, and next thing I know, that thing skyrockets. I woke up the next day to 300 plus views and looked at myself and went, what happened overnight to cause this? And then I saw the comments coming in, and I'm like, oh crap, this was not meant to be like this. I wasn't prepared for this. That's why I didn't cite any of my sources. That's why I didn't say anything, because I'm like, I didn't expect it to go this far. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me try to make videos and stuff and give sources, and let me try to explain myself. And every video I created, I kept making mistake after mistake after mistake. And I've learned. I've taken the criticism, and I've taken it on the chin quite hard. And I'm working through it, right? I'm just the same as you all. I'm very passionate about this. It's why I went to school for it. It's why I went and got my degrees in it. That's why I have worked so hard for this stuff, and I'm passionate. And sometimes I will admit my temper does flare. I have a short fuse. So sometimes I can go a little off the rails. So that's on me and something I'm working through. But for this, really, I wanted to kind of do a face reveal and kind of explain who I am, what I do, and stuff like that. And it really lets you understand, where I'm coming from and why you should trust me, and, my accreditations and stuff like that. And also just really give you some background information on me. So, I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up around Raleigh, Fuquay area, and my family's all military. They are. My mom was Navy. Her dad was Army, and so on and so forth. It keeps going back and back, right? And because I grew up without a father, so I didn't have a male figure in my life. So my mom, being military, was, my male figure in a way. She always used to say that I'm your mama and your daddy rolled in one, and I'll hit you where it hurts. And so I took that, a lot. And then especially the community I grew up around was a lot of military veterans. And so I had a lot of exposure at a young age to military veterans and military stories, and which kind of drove me to, when I turned 18, I joined the Army. I joined as a 19 Delta, as a cavalry scout. I joined specifically to, in my opinion, at the time at 18, my entire philosophy was I was going to get deployed. I wanted to go fight in Afghanistan. I wanted to, go make a name for myself, or I wanted to go and, really prove that I had the capability to go to war, and which is crazy to a lot of people. A lot of my reasons for joining the military were never good. I tell people all the time, a lot of the reasons I did was just to run away from home, because if I had stayed at home, I would never have done anything with my life. So there's that. But while I was in the Army, I was stationed at 214 Cav on Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, which was already crazy enough. I got stationed on Hawaii, which is a retirement duty station, and usually a duty station people rarely get a chance to go to. So I got lucky coming out of one station unit training with Hawaii. I didn't treat it that way when I first got there. Like for the first 3 months, I enjoyed it. Afterwards, I absolutely hated it. You couldn't drive. You can only drive so many times in a circle before you get really bored. So, but my entire Army career is nothing like a normal Army career should have been. I was a combat MOS, meaning that I should have been on a combat line with a combat troop. I wasn't. After 5 months of being in my unit, they pushed me to the squadron headquarters, where I worked with S3. I became the squadron commander, his RTO. I became basically his driver, protector, all these other things that get wrapped in one. And I was pushed into high ranks with higher enlisted NCOs, first sergeant majors, command sergeant majors, and lieutenant colonels, majors, captains and stuff. And I was a private. And I was one of 3 enlisted people in my section. There was only me and 2 other guys. And the 2 other guys both got out right after I got there. And that left me basically all alone. So when I came to the conclusion that, hey, I love the military. I really did. I wanted to stay in it. It was supposed to be my career. It was supposed to be what I was supposed to do. But that didn't happen. But while working as my lieutenant colonel's RTO, I developed a love for leadership. I developed a love for understanding how battles flow. I understood how data flows and how logistics get messed up, and the overall battlefield view is different from being a private on the combat line. Because as a private, when you're sitting in a Humvee staring at trees and bushes looking ahead of you, it's kind of like, what are we doing? Where are we in rotation to, or in consideration to the rest of the unit? What are we actually doing? What are we looking at? What are we supposed to be fighting or looking for, or what? But looking on from a battle map in the talk and tack, it was clear to me to see how the battlefield would actually shape out, and how these commanders and colonels and stuff like that eventually create a full-scale dynamic warfare scenario. And it was eye-opening for me. It really was, especially at 19, 20, 21. I completely changed. Anybody will tell you that they knew me. I completely changed from being a joker to being more authoritative, I guess you could say, which was kind of a bad thing as a private and a specialist, because I used to pull the card of, well, I can do whatever I want because my lieutenant colonel and first sergeant and major and captain will back me up. To which they did, which they shouldn't have, but they did. So I got away with a lot of stupid things and saying a lot of stupid things. I almost got into a fist fight with a sergeant major who just got to brigade, and it was my birthday, and I was released from PT early for my birthday for the whole day. And he came out of nowhere. I was completely in the wrong. I was, but I didn't know who he was. But my judgment call there to basically begin yelling and fighting him, I shouldn't have done that, because I should have recognized that this is an old guy who's bald, big buff, and then you had me looking up at him like a Chihuahua versus a Rottweiler, Like, it made no sense in my mind looking back on it now. But that's one of the few funny stories I have. I have a ton more, but trust me, my entire military career could be a documentary or a book by itself. And I've been writing a book about it, and I've been slowly working through it. Writing books is something I'm still getting used to doing. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I also volunteer at a lot of military museums around my state. I also do a lot of project work with them and curations and writing articles and researching stuff for the museums. So I'm very wide versed in stuff when it comes to military history. I created this channel to, like I said, create a portfolio for what my dream job would be one day. But I also wanted to understand that some people were going to watch my videos that weren't a part of my family or friends group that knew what I was doing. So I'm like, okay, well, I have to make the content relevant. I have to make the content good, and I have to push a narrative that, short because I wanted to create short, concise content that anybody could watch without losing attention span. And it was all from a perspective of look at what we know, what we don't know, and what lies in the unknown section. And that entire thing was me going from one to the next, and then just getting lines all mixed up in my very early videos. And I wanted to blend a storytelling with myth busting and a respect for all of who fought, regardless of what side, Axis or allies. I wanted to respect all of them. You know, when it comes to even Civil War or Vietnam and stuff like that, you have to understand what they were fighting for, or why we were fighting against them, or what they really believed. And so I pull a lot of source documents for me from the opposite side. I study a lot of, you know, soldiers in the Wehrmacht and the SS, and I studied a lot of Allied soldiers within any of the divisions. And I try to piece together the information and make it seem as if both sides were respectable in what they were trying to do, resourceful, competitive, and completely valid in their own opinions. Remember, an opinion is something anybody can have, right? I can have my opinion and you can have your opinion. Doesn't mean we have to agree. But when it comes to citing historical evidence and facts, we both have to sit down and look at the source information. That's the job of me as a military historian. I have to verify. I can't just say these things without backing up my information. And that's something I accidentally did in a lot of my earlier videos, because like I said, I didn't expect them to blow up the way they did, right? You know, the U.S. Armor video was requested by a kid in my neighborhood. So I never thought that it was going to blow up overnight to reach over, 300 views. And then I had no source information and people just believed I was spouting Allied propaganda and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to actually have a general conversation and teach somebody something. And so I made a mistake with that video. I followed that video up with another U.S. Armor video, and I tried to do something better with it. It didn't work. It didn't stick. It didn't land. And I know that personally because I watched it back multiple times now, and I'm like, I don't like this video. I'm never going to take a video down. I just acknowledge that the video is not up to par with what I could have done. It's not. And then when it came to the German armor videos, well, the first German armor video, I absolutely crushed what I thought was going to be good. And I was trying to cover just the basic principles of German armor. I wasn't trying to get into the armored fighting vehicles or the assault guns and stuff like that. I was just trying to mainstream the German armor line. And a lot of people either took offense to what I said or didn't like how I presented the information and stuff like that, in which I'm still getting used to presenting information in a video format. If we're talking personally, face-to-face, it's different because then it becomes a historical debate. At that point, we both have to rely on our knowledge. You can't do that with me here except in the comments, right? And a lot of comments, it's hard to understand where you're coming from, especially if you don't provide me sources to verify what you're saying. I have nothing else to go on other than what I already know and what you know. So you see where we butt heads on that. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to push forward and do better videos. I'm getting good with editing. I've been practicing a lot of editing, and my first new video, the Battle off Samar, the battle analysis of that, I really began to reach into the YouTube creator studio that they have and pull things of that. Like my intro, for example. I went into the YouTube creator studio, found music, and I put my logo over a vinaigrette filter, and that became the intro right there. And I was like, oh my God, I made an intro, because I'm not computer savvy when it comes to that kind of stuff. When it comes to video editing and drawing and stuff like that, I'm not good with it. So I have to, BS my way through video editing and try to crop and cut things and make things look good. And I tried to do it all with the idea that I'm here to provide an educational content video. I see a lot of these bigger YouTubers a lot of the stuff I get in my comments, I guess, are comments that people put on big name channels, like say Drachnafil, the Chieftains, any other major history YouTube channel. A lot of them get some flack. If you scroll very far down through their comments that aren't praising them, you'll see a lot of the flack that they get, but they don't acknowledge it anymore. I can't speak to when they first started YouTube because I was never there for that. So I'm thinking it's the same situation where some people have their biases and they have their opinions, and they are completely entitled to those opinions in their entirety. My whole thing is that I wanted to present history in the sense of the myths that we inherited, right? So like I've done my research in college, and I wrote a whole paper and article about this, about the myths we inherited, right? Between post-war propaganda and national pride that inflated a lot of statistics and like just a lot of wrong information to make it seem as if, everything was bigger and grander than it actually was. And a lot of memoirs from World War II are, all anecdotal at best, right? And a lot of them are, inflating whatever position they believe, right? And then early Cold War politics also played a part, because I also minored in political science. It shaped a lot of the Western views from glorifying the German army to counterbalance the Soviet image. So a lot of the older generation, if you look at some of their textbooks and their magazines and, documentaries from back in the day, you'll begin to see a lot of the information that's in them. You can actually break down and go, well, I'm not sure about that anymore. Or, hey, we know that's not true. Or, something along those lines. I mean, some examples, like Japan could have won the war. In reality, resources and their industrial limitation was what's going to kill them in the long run, was overextension of their land. And they couldn't keep all of it, especially not with the U.S. bearing down on them with the Allies' help. So Japan could never have won the war. Japan could have kept delaying the war if they had a longer time. If Germany hadn't capitulated as quickly, Japan probably could have lasted for a couple more years, perhaps, if America didn't want to drop the A-bomb. And that's completely alternate history. Something that I love alternate history, but I don't try to get into it because that leaves too many what-ifs questions, what had to go wrong, what had to go right. So I just avoid alternate history altogether. I mean, some of the sources for a lot of the myths that were debunked today and later on, like Stephen Zaloga's Armored Thunderbolt, Jentz and Doyle's Germany's Tiger Tanks, Parshall and Tully, Shattered Sword, Richard Overy, Why the Allies Won, David Glantz, When Titans Clashed. I mean, these are some heavy-hitting authors in academic circles. So I wanted to use their source information and then along with some of my modern sources and bring it up to date. But I also don't want to just do World War II content on here. It's not going to be well for my portfolio. So I began branching out into ideas and stuff like that. And I'm working on some episodes in the future, such as the 761st Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers, which was an all-black tank, U.S. tank unit. And they got like presidential citations. They fought under Patton. They had a really crazy story behind that unit alone. And then there's also the Tuskegee Airmen, of course. I mean, everybody knows them from Red Tails and stuff like that. I mean, they're the first black military aviators in U.S. History with excellent bomber escort records and excellent fighter combat records. I mean, there's a 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which was Japanese-American soldiers that were fighting for America and became the most decorated unit for its size in U.S. history. And they fought while most of their families were still in internment camps, which is a pretty interesting story to tell. There's also like the Navajo Code Talkers and the Indian and African soldiers who also fought out of the British colonies. There's so many different stories to tell that I want to branch out into all of them. I don't want to just tell the big stuff. I want to also dive into the unknown stuff. That's why I started Echoes Through Time. Echoes Through Time is getting no views, which is completely fine by me. For me, it's about linguistics. It's helping me refine how I would present historical speeches and how I would present information within them and help people understand what the significance of the speech was. It's not about me just reading the speech, spitting off a few facts, and then closing the video out. No, for me, it's helping establish myself as basically a more verifiable military historian who understands that not all the military speeches in World War II or any time in history focused on like 7 of them. Instead, it's a compilation of different speeches that add up to everything. One speech I've wanted to do that I'm very scared to do is any of Hitler's speeches, any of them, because one, translating from German to English is quite difficult, but also I don't want to come across as a Nazi. So it's kind of hard to do when somebody might skip forward and just hear me speaking versus actually paying attention to the video. So that's quite interesting. This video is running on quite a while because I have a timer in the top screen. I don't expect you to watch this whole thing. I really don't. This is just me rambling and giving you some background information on me. I want to go over some of the other videos that I did do that received a lot of criticism. And I want to talk about them for a moment, such as my U.S. Armor video and stuff like that. There are some tanks I missed, right? I only included tanks that I believed were the main driving force, right? I skipped the entirety of the M2 Stuart, which I shouldn't have done, and I admit that's wrong. I shouldn't have done that, but I skipped it because either I forgot about it, or when I was writing the script, I just didn't do any research about it, so I just didn't include it. That's my bad. As for the German armors videos, I caught a lot of flack for those, which, I mean, to be fair, some of the things I said in there can be received as hateful or, you know, inaccurate or me cherry picking my sources and information. But at the same time, the war didn't last 10 years. A lot of people like say, well, when we talk about, you know, 42 to 43, that's a limited time window. It's like, that's a year. That's a year out of the conflict where the Tiger was available in mass numbers to be used on frontline combat. So we have to look at that small time frame and really assess it. This isn't like the Philippine conflict or anything like that took, you know, several weeks and months and stuff like that had a ton of stuff go on within a small time frame. This is a year's worth of stuff that we have to condense down into a 10-minute video. Or I have to make it into an hour-long video where my analytics go, people stopped watching after 3 minutes. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to create short-form content. I have to remind myself that this channel is not a marathon. It's a sprint. Every video is a sprint through history. So if you can deal with that, you'll understand why I have to omit or why I have to not go as deep, which is why I started creating deeper dives on certain topics that people requested. I also have to admit that I study both sides of any conflict, any war. My professors will tell you any of this. My academic advisor will tell you any of this, that I see from both sides of a conflict. I believe both sides were correct in any conflict. Any conflict throughout history, both sides have reasons and needs and wants, and the idea of what they were doing is correct. Same thing with opinions. You know, a lot of people believe it was all because of, you know, this certain person said this and the whole nation rallied around them and then attacked another country and kickstarted the war. A lot of times it's more nuanced than that. A lot of times it's more political, and a lot of times it's more economic, which is something that me as a military historian, I've had to research and do. I've had to take economics classes. I've had to take politics classes, government, law, you know, all these different classes, because for me, military history has never been just studying war and studying the technology and the, you know, weaponry. It's been about studying the underlying truths of everything. It's about being there and understanding exactly what went wrong, what did go right, and why it turned out the way it did. So I want to take the next part to kind of address this criticism that I've been getting in a lot of my comments. Now, me personally, I've sort of tuned out the comments now after a couple videos now. I've kind of learned to just ignore them, because in the beginning I wanted to really, you know, when people started commenting, you know, I really wanted to start talking to them and like really, you know, getting into historical debates or questions and answering things with my sources and trying to get like stuff like that. But, you know, a lot of people like saw me as, you know, anti-German or anti-ally or anti-anything. And for me, that's not true. I'm anti-bad history. I want to teach the full thing. I want to teach everything. And I want to teach you the truth, regardless of what bias you may feel. For me, personally, I have no sway or opinion towards the Allies or the Axis. I feel like Switzerland most times when talking about them, because on both sides of each conflict, I've sat there and weighed the odds and go, both sides committed war crimes. But what side got punished? Oh, the Axis. Why? Because they lost. Because the victors write the history books. So if you get where I'm going, I don't have an opinion on either or. And some of the best stories and some of the best lessons that you can learn is from the losing side of a war, from the losers that got their ass handed to them. And for me, that's where I do a lot of my research, is on the losing side. And I use multiple different variations of sources, from actual military documentation to firsthand soldier accounts, which, by the way, are anecdotal, meaning that I can't necessarily use them as a primary source. They can be a tertiary source or a secondary source if they have claims to back it up. So I have to, whenever I quote a soldier or anything like that, I have to put it into a bias field, meaning that I have to look at it through the lens of this person saw it this way from their perspective. So it's their opinion, meaning it's not factual, meaning it could be factual depending on the person, but it also could just be their biases and opinions. So, and there's also that. And also I want to talk about one quick little thing. I've gotten emails from YouTube about my channel in the comments, right? A lot of my comments apparently are so bad, people are reporting people in my comments because I'm not doing it. I woke up one night to 3 different emails, apparently that somebody committed multiple community guide violations in my comments, and their comment was removed by YouTube. And I'm like, what? What did somebody say? Or did somebody get that hurt? Or did somebody get that offended by what somebody else said that they got them, blocked on YouTube or reported or what? So I honestly don't know what happened there. If comments go up on videos, I don't touch them. I may look at them, I may comment back, but I don't know how to remove them. I don't understand why I would, because that would be basically censoring somebody's opinions. And to me, that's not okay. I went into the military to fight for your constitutional rights, for your First Amendment. Meaning you have every right to disagree with me and every right to bash me and drag me through the mud, because you do. That's what I went and fought for. It's what I signed up for. So at the same time, I'm not going to remove comments, so somebody else is doing it. And I'm trying to figure out why YouTube is removing some of them, because some of the comments, I'm assuming, were probably not all that bad. They just probably got a little carried away with words, right? So that's what I believe. So I want to make a promise going forward that I never bend history to fit a narrative. I never will. I always use my facts first, even if they upset myths or national pride. I always respect history, respect those who lived it, and fought on both sides, because that's the name of the game. At the end of the day, somebody died believing what they want. That's it. You have to respect that. When somebody dies for a cause, regardless of your opinion on it, it's noble, it's honorable, and it's respectable, even if it was wrong. Throughout history, a lot of things have shown that. So in closing, I want to thank you for being here early in my journey. I want to thank you all for your comments, your likes, your subscribes, your shares, because you guys are the driving force behind this, as I said, because I have no clue what's going on. This was meant to be a portfolio, not a YouTube channel. This was never meant to take off the way it did. So I want to thank you all for that. And I want to really remind people to, be respectful when it comes to history. I mean, there's so much that we all get carried away with and stuff. And sometimes we don't understand what we're saying until we've already said it. And remember, in comments, especially with texting, same situation goes. Tone does not carry. It doesn't. When someone reads a comment, they have to read it up here and take it at face value. So if you say something along the lines of, well, I believe this and you're wrong, this is what actually happened, you have to understand that the tone that you may have used was not yelling or bashing, but it was criticism. It was saying, I believe this, you should think about this. Instead of, you're wrong, think about it like that, okay? So be respectful to each other and be respectful in the comments, because I'm tired of getting emails from YouTube about community guideline violations, because at some point they're going to take my channel down, probably. But also, I am working on a documentary. I have an actual movie project going on with a movie studio that I'm working on creating. It's about the Vietnam War and talking with Vietnam veterans and working on actually documenting their stories, and not the generals, not the officers. I'm talking about privates and lower NCOs, getting the real first-hand accounts from the actual people who were there and doing them a justice by giving them a voice. Because everybody wants to talk about the generals, the military decision makers. Nobody talks about the private that was wading through the rice paddies, scared out of his mind and trying to understand why he was even there. So I'm working on that big project, and that's a project that's probably going to take me about another year to finish, because we're still searching for Vietnam veterans who are willing to open up and really, show us what it was really like and tell us their stories, and really give the younger generation something to look back on, something to understand, and something to really believe in, and not fear them or hate them, or not understand why we would go to Vietnam and fight and lose. Because that's just politics at that point. I'm more interested in telling real stories in real people. So if you'll bear with me on that, because that's what I'm really busy with besides my work in museums and stuff like that, I want to bring it to you, and I want to show it to you. I have ideas to take some of the clips from the documentary I'm working on and put them on here. That way you can hear some of these soldier stories, because some of them will actually make you cry and some of them will make you laugh. So once again, I want to thank you all for watching. If you watched this all the way through, I am so sorry, but I love you guys. I want to thank you all for being here again. And as I said on every video, always dig deeper and build a bridge over history, not just for yourself, but to reach out to others. Thank you.